Oh, g'day! Today I'm doing the AuthorTube Newbie Tag, so let's get right into it. How did you first learn about the AuthorTube community? I've been on YouTube for a number of years now, but I've only just come across AuthorTube. In fact, just this morning, I was listening to the science fiction and fantasy marketing podcast, and they were interviewing Jenna Moreci, and she mentioned the AuthorTube community. And I thought, man, I've got to learn more about this. And here I am. What genres do you write? I write speculative fiction, primarily focusing on science fiction, but I've dabbled a bit in fantasy, and I may do again in the future. I have a fairly broad definition of science fiction, and I love it all. Time travel, superhero, whatever. But my favourite subgenre of science fiction is space opera. I really love getting into the adventure and the sense of wonder as you just look at the universe and are able to travel through it. I find that really cool. So everything that I write has some kind of a speculative or science fiction element to it. My primary project is called Jewel of the Stars, which is a space opera series about a cruise ship in space. What is your preferred tense, point of view, and category of story? I like third-person past tense. It's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I've grown up reading. I have dabbled a little bit in first-person present tense because I felt it was appropriate for the particular story that I was writing. But yeah, my go-to default position is always third-person past tense. I find the whole present tense thing as a reader really kind of jarring, and over the years I've gotten kind of more used to it, and it doesn't pull me out of the story like it did when I first started reading it. But you know, they all have their place. They're all tools. As for category, I think basically what this means is, you know, what age group you're targeting, whether it's middle grade, YA, adult, whatever. I would class what I write as adult fiction, and I don't mean by that just like adults only type stuff. I think it has a very wide appeal in terms of age. I was enjoying science fiction as a kid. I still enjoy it now. I still primarily enjoy a lot of the same kinds of stories I did back then. And I think that's true with what I write. Obviously, it's targeted at people who enjoy a certain genre, but much less so at a particular age group. Are you a plotter, pantser, or plantser? I am very much a plotter. I do fairly extensive outlines. I write an outline for every scene in the book, and I use the tenets of scene structure, so I break it up into a goal, a conflict, and an outcome, and I write something for each of those three components for every scene. So I have, by the time I'm ready to start writing a draft, quite a lot of material. I know exactly where this story is going. I've got all the major plot points laid out, and I just actually have to write the thing. This is in a perfect world, and I like living in a perfect world. But there are times, particularly when you make a last-minute decision to do NaNoWriMo, or Camp NaNoWriMo, like I always do. I really should plan ahead. Funny that I'm a planner. Anyway, you suddenly realise, okay, I've got to do Nano now, but I haven't got a completed outline for this story. So I've developed a concept that I call just-in-time outlining. So first of all, you've got to know your major plot points at the 25%, 50%, 75% marks. So you've got to have that. At least I do. And I need to have, it's like on YouTube where you've got your buffering, how much data is loaded and how much of the content has been played, and the line for what's been loaded has got to be ahead of where you are playing, or else you're going to start buffering. So I use that concept sometimes with my just-in-time outlining. So I always make sure that I've got at least enough scenes outlined that I can write them. If I run out of outlined scenes, then I have to stop writing and I have to work on the outline before I can continue with the draft. Now, the further ahead you are, the better, obviously. And if I'm going to start a project, then I really would want at least the first act fully outlined and a good idea of where the rest of the story is going. And I will continue outlining the later parts of the story while I'm writing the first draft. So that's my just-in-time outlining concept. And it serves me well for NaNoWriMo. Are you self-published? traditionally published, or yet to be published. I'm primarily self-published. I do have a couple of short stories that have been published by small presses, and with a small press, the lines get a little bit blurry, but I'm not the publisher in that case. I'm receiving royalties, so my experience is kind of like a traditional kind of experience there. My main series, Jewel of the Stars, I am self-publishing. The project is very well suited for self-publishing, and particularly for ebooks. And yeah, I'm really enjoying that world. Who are you published with, or who is your dream publishing house and literary agent? So the short stories I mentioned have been published with the Crossover Alliance and Bear Publications. I don't really have a dream publishing house or agent. You know, as I said, I'm mostly focused on the self-publishing world. I am a big fan of Enclave Publishing, and it would be a lot of fun to get something published through them. But honestly, I'm really quite happy in my indie space at the moment, so that's where I'm focusing my energy. What AuthorTube videos can we expect on your channel? I've always tried to make this channel focused on readers rather than just specifically on authors. Now, of course, authors are readers as well, but I've never tried to just focus in on the author community. I know a lot of writers do very well with that. I'm not planning to make a major change in the focus of this channel, so don't worry about that. There is probably some stuff that I could do around story structure, which is kind of an interest of mine, a bit of a passion. But the way I do it is kind of tie it back into my writing and use that as an example, in the hope of kind of using these videos to pull double duty in a way. I mean, it could be something that's of interest to writers, and maybe someone else might even learn something from my extremely limited experience as a relatively new writer. But I would also want it to come across as a bit of a behind-the-scenes look for readers, particularly for fans of my writing. So that's the kind of thing that I would be doing that is more AuthorTubey than anything I've done before. When did you start writing? Goodness, when did I start breathing? I've been making up stories my entire life. Like, I do not remember any beginning to that. But obviously I didn't start writing until I could hold a pencil. But it's always been a part of my life, as far back as I can remember. What was the first story you ever wrote? Well, I don't think I could delve back into history to really remember the first story I wrote. But when I was packing up the house to move a couple of months ago, I did find some of the old stories I wrote as a young kid. So that was pretty cool. That's a bit of history, and probably of interest to no one but me. But to look back at your childhood stories, and you drew little illustrations and you stapled together to bind it as a book. That's cool stuff. What authors have inspired you the most? Wow, okay. Brandon Sanderson, he's a big one. Not only am I a big fan of his work, but I think I have a similar way of writing to him in some ways. He's leans more on the story side and has very kind of light prose, and I'm like that too. Others would be Frank Peretti. I learned a lot about writing a climax from him. Robin Parrish, he does some really cool kind of epic stuff. If I was to move outside the world of books into the world of screenwriting, if you permit me to do that, J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5, he has a huge influence on me as a storyteller. I've learned a lot from him. I admire him greatly as a writer, and yeah, he's definitely a big influence on me as well. Do you schedule writing time or just write whenever possible? So I'm in a bit of a transition with this question at the moment. I haven't always been the best at being disciplined with my writing, and particularly with setting aside time for writing. I think scheduling is the key to that for me. So I am trying to be more deliberate in terms of scheduling writing time at the moment. I have the privilege of working from home most of the time. So that time that I would have spent driving to the office, I can actually work on personal projects. Now I have a number of things on the go. Obviously I've got YouTube, I look after a website for a writing organisation, things like that. So there's plenty of stuff competing for that time. But I need to be scheduling to make sure that writing doesn't just get swamped by all the other activities. So I think looking at the week and actually putting on a calendar, I'm going to do some YouTube stuff before work this day, and these couple of days are going to be writing. That I think is going to be helpful, and that's what I'm moving towards at the moment. We'll see how it goes. Do you write by computer, typewriter, or combo? Well, actually, I kind of have these neural implants, and I just think my story, and it digitizes it. No, seriously, I definitely use the computer. I'm a big fan of Scrivener. Scrivener's my hero. I very occasionally will get a piece of paper and a pen. If I'm stuck on something and I just need to nut it out, I do find that is a little bit freeing, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time, I'm either out walking, thinking about stuff, or I'm typing it on the computer. Where do you write? Well, there's a couple of places. Traditionally, I've always written at the dining table because I had nowhere else. Now that we've moved house, I actually do have a garage office, which I'm loving. It's great to have my own space where I can go and work. I will be sharing it with my wife, who's got her little corner for sewing, and that's cool. But I do still do some writing at the kitchen table. I am not the kind of... I see a lot of videos, people like sitting up in bed writing or writing on the couch. I don't know how they can do that. There is nothing I find more uncomfortable in the world than trying to use a computer on a bed. Like, I don't know what to do with my legs and where to put the computer. Like, it's horrible. I've got to be sitting on a chair at a table. What are you looking forward to most on AuthorTube? I think just getting an opportunity to become part of the community. Obviously watching a lot of other people's videos and learning what I can from them. YouTube is awesome, and it's a great way to learn. It's a great way to be entertained. So there's certainly a lot that I can take in from the AuthorTube community. But yeah, the opportunity to maybe contribute something to that community as well sounds pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Well, that's me. If you're part of the AuthorTube community, go ahead and say good day in the comments down below. I'd like to connect with some other people in the community. Anyway, I will see you next time. Catch you later.